Also, we're going to record this new. I'm Tasnia, and I'm going to be studying law at Cambridge. For my A-levels, I did English Lit, History, and Sociology. And yeah, I'm here to give advice on the whole UCAS process. I'm also events manager for UpLaw and a recruiter. I think I've met some of you before as well. So happy to have you here. If Kelvin could go next.
Hey guys, I'm Kelvin. I'm going into year 13. I want to study law. I'm an IB student, so if anyone here does IB or just wants advice, let me know. I'm part of the social media management team, and I also came up with the idea of UpLaw, and I'm so happy all the other co-founders, we all decided to come today and just give advice on six on this stuff. And yeah.
Donna?
Hi everyone, I'm Donna. I'm going to study law at LSE this September. I studied A-level history, English Lit, politics, and an EPQ.
Anjali?
Hi, I'm going into year 13. I'm studying A-levels right now, and I'm taking English literature, maths, and psychology, and I'm also doing an EPQ.
Sanji?
Hi, I'm Sanchi. I'm also studying the IB, and I want to study psychology at either Oxford or Bath, and then I'd like to do a conversion course to pursue a career in law. So a more sort of non-conventional route into law, but if any of you are considering that, then you can message me or ask about that.
And Abby?
Hi everyone, I'm Abby. I study A-levels in English, History and Politics, and I'm hoping to start my law degree in 2022 with the hopes of becoming a solicitor, and in UpLaw I'm in part of the social media team.
That's great. So one of the first questions we got was how to stand out in a personal statement in law. And first of all, I'm going to give it over to our co-founder, Dana, who's actually going to be studying law at LSE. And she's going to explain what she thinks makes you stand out in a personal statement.
So I think writing about what essentially interests you will then show that you have a unique passion for something. And if you have a passion for an area of law, you should write about that in your personal statement. Another thing is, I think you should make sure to stick with one or two or three areas of law, or else it's just gonna end up non-cohesive, and you're gonna get a lack of flow through the personal statement. So if you just stick to what you're passionate about in law, and I guess some people don't really know what they're passionate about in law, they just like a lot of different things. You should probably go and try and read up on it, read a bit of books, read the news, maybe watch some lectures. The Cambridge and Oxford do a lot of lectures, and they post it on YouTube for you to watch. You can have a look, see which ones interest you, and then maybe you can find your passion.
Yeah, and to add on to that, these aren't, what I'm going to say, these aren't must-haves, but they might make you stand out in terms of personal statement. It's always something nice to maybe put something personal in your introduction, kind of to see why it links you to the degree. And obviously not everyone has that experience, and it's fine if you don't, but I found that it really draws the person in who's reading it. It shows a personal connection you have to the degree. It's also something nice to put something you've done out of your own initiative. So maybe any research, an article, or how we're doing UpLaw, if you have a law blog, that's always nice to put in as well. Because one thing I've heard a lot is for the unis that do interviews, so Oxford, they like to hear about that stuff because it shows that you've gone above and beyond to show your love for the degree you're going for. But again, these are must-have because not everyone has the facilities for that. So like Dana said, if you just show your love for the subject, and then show proof of it through any events or any reading you've done, that works as well. And then I'm also going to go to our co-founder Abby for any advice she has on how to stand out in a personal statement in law.
Yeah, so I'm writing my personal statement at the minute, and the advice that I've been given most often by like Cambridge students and like teachers and other people who like review personal statements is showing skill and showing a genuine like dedication to the subject, and being able to like critically and like academically analyze things is probably like the biggest thing that especially for more competitive universities, like they tend to look for. And how, like, remember when you're writing a personal statement, it shouldn't be so career focused. It should be based on like studying the subject because you really want and love to study law. So make sure that that really shines through on your personal statement. And I think by like, even like through extracurriculars and things, being able to show that those relate back to the skill of being like the study of law, and also like your dedication to the subject. So whether that be through like your academic pursuits, like I don't know, maybe you founded your own law society, or you went to like a series of lectures or something like that, just showing that you actually have some kind of like passion and drive, and you dedicate your time towards learning more about this subject. I think that's really beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Abby. It is very important to like show you've gone out and done things to show your interest in the degree. One of our next questions is, to what extent are your GCSEs considered, in our opinion? And we're going to apply this question both to like any outreach programs you apply to, like Pathways to Law, and to university in general. We're going to start off with our co-founder, Kelvin.
Hi, everyone. So like, to answer this question, obviously COVID-19 didn't allow me to sit my GCSEs, and I didn't get the best grades possible, and I wasn't happy with that. So I kind of bounced back in year 12, at the end of year 12, getting really good grades to apply to Oxford University. And I would say that in terms of GCSEs are not the determining factor. I've got into a number of programs. For example, I'm in Pathways to Law, Certain Trust. I've done a few law programs. I've done work experiences with Pinter Masons, Bird and Bird, and a few other firms. And my GCSEs haven't really stopped me from doing any of that. And I would say that the best advice, obviously, if you feel like your GCSEs are a bit, you know, like me, I would say work hard, show your teachers that, oh, miss, I can get these grades at the end of year 12, year 13, predict me these grades, but you need to show evidence. You need to have a clear goal of what grades you want to achieve. And I also recommend vision boarding, like get a board with pictures, with grades, like what you envision yourself in the next 5 years, like what's my route, what's my journey. And the best advice someone's ever told me, and I've actually stuck to it now, is you need to find your why. Why am I doing this? What's my end goal? What's my aim? Am I trying to do this for my parents? Am I trying to do this for myself? You need to be able to do that. And don't let your GCSE stop you from applying to top universities, because your A-level grades can always combat that. And it also, your interview, your law exam or psych exam, your TSA, or your, I don't know, like BMAT, whatever, don't let that stop you from progressing in life. I hope that helps.
Yeah, definitely. And also, if Abby could also contribute.
Yeah, so I've kind of like with GCSEs, I guess I've had a similar experience with Kelvin, and just on like turning around your grades, like don't ever think that you're stuck at a certain point, or that you're just a B student or you're just a C student, because I think a huge thing is like mindset. And I used to think like, oh, I'm really bad at French because I'm dyslexic as well. So I thought, no, French is never going to be my thing. Like I'm always just going to be awful at French. And then I kind of, in my first marks in GCSE in December, I got a U in my mark, and it was the first U I'd ever got in my whole time at school. And I was devastated because I knew I was bad at French, but I didn't think I was that bad at French. And it really kind of shocked me. And I thought like, no, this can't happen. There has to be some way I can turn this around. Like I can't fail one of my GCSEs. And then in the space of 2 months, so between December and February, I worked solely, but I didn't work just on French, but I put loads of effort into it. And I really, really thought in my head, like, I can do this. I have to do this. There has to be a way. And I ended up getting a 6 in my mark. And then my teacher assessed grade ended up being a 6 as well. And even my teacher was like, how did this happen? Like, how did you do that? And it just shows you like you can do it. And like with the effort and stuff, like you can put it in. And then on the topic of like programs and things, I think for university, Oxbridge is a whole different conversation, because we know that like Oxford cares more about GCSEs than Cambridge, but at the same time, that's like they look at your application holistically. So don't ever think that's just the deciding factor. And usually there'll be like one part of your application that's really strong and one part that isn't as strong. So like it's the same for a lot of candidates. Like it won't be an issue. And there are people who I've heard of who have got into Oxford with like less than all nines and everything like that. So I'm sure like if that's your goal, you'll be fine. And then the thing is though, with GCSEs and firm programs, while there are so many firm programs out there that aren't as academically focused, there are definitely ones that are academically focused. The Clifford Chance Access Scheme is one example. I've been on the program, and pretty much everyone I spoke to on there, it felt like they had completely like all 9 to 7 at GCSE, and it was very overwhelming. But it felt like I hadn't realized it when I was writing the application or applying, that it was so academically focused. But when I was there, it appeared that everyone was very like, everyone that on the program was looking at Oxford and Cambridge, it felt like. So I think that's also important to keep in mind, and it isn't like that for everything, but there definitely are a few firms that care more. And I think it's also important to recognize that a lot of the ways that firms can like take out applications, because some of these programs are really competitive, right? Like I think on the Access program, they had like 1,000 applicants and only 30 spaces. So it's like the easiest way firms can go, no, we don't want to look at these applications, is by grades. So that's also something to keep in mind, but it's not the be all and end all, because just because one firm won't take you doesn't mean 100 other firms will, like 100 other firms will be delighted to have you, and grades aren't everything. Also on the topic of vision boards, here is my vision board. I quickly went to get it off the wall. Lots of it is just pictures of Jessica Pearson from Suits, as you can tell. And I'm definitely going to be adding this to this, because I went to Cambridge recently, and I took some pictures of me outside the college I want to go to, so they will be going on there as well. Yeah, so vision boards are great, and I look at that before I leave the house every day. And sometimes I like to pretend that I'm a corporate lawyer before I leave the house, and I feel like it just motivates me that little bit more.
Yeah, that's Kelvin, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say also, like, don't forget, your passion can also get you in. If you really have the passion for that subject, like, I know majority of us are all really geeky, like, you need to become a geek. You need to also demonstrate that in your passive statement. You need to become a geek. Like, I'm a geek for law, like, I love it. Like, for my passive statement, for example, like, I messaged a professor from Queen Mary's about data privacy, and he responded with a few more lectures for me to watch. And that's what my passive statement is going to be about, because I did a work experience to the chambers. And I would just say that on the topic of the vision board, like this is just like a little post that I have to wake up to every morning. My goals for year 13. I have my revision timetable there. You need to become organized. Also, if you're organized, you get those grades. Yeah, like just any other questions, just let me know. And also don't forget to raise your hands if you want to speak or anything.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of our co-founders. Like, you will get some bad grades here and there, but don't let that throw you off course. As long as you like persevere to improve from it, like our co-founder Abby did, and just to show your passion for the degree. Sometimes like grades aren't the be all end all. So I think I definitely agree with both of our co-founders on this. And to our next question, what made you want to do law? And I'm going to direct this first at our co-founder Anjali.
So I kind of did have one of those moments where it kind of just clicked for me that like I wanted to do law. Back in year 10, so I wasn't always sure like what I wanted to do. In year 10, I wasn't the most motivated student. I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do in the future. I had no idea what A-levels I was going to pick. I didn't know what career I wanted. And I went on a university trip, and it was Oxford. And I was just like, I really want to go there, but I have no idea what I want to take. So I was like, I need to sort my life out. And I kind of just sat down and thought about it and all of the subjects or things that I was interested in general. And I just realized how involved I already was in law already. So I was already completing super curricular activities without even realizing it, like podcasts, just reading random cases and doing deep dive searches on Wikipedia or other law pages, and just really getting into all of these different cases and sentencing laws. I also did a Harvard EDX course. It's a justice course. It's really good if you want to check that out. But just realizing how much I'd already been involved with the subject just made me realize that if I was willingly doing this in my spare time before I was even having it as like an academic obligation, I was like, this is what I want to do in the future. And that's when I realized that I wanted to study law and pursue it as a career.
That's a really nice story, just to know that you like to do it in your daily life. No hard feelings that you're going for Oxford though. But on to our next co-founder, Kelvin, about what made him want to do law.
So at first I wanted to do medicine because everyone in my family is literally a doctor, and also because I'm a massive fan of Grey's Anatomy. But then I decided that I'm not good at science at all. Like, me and science, yeah, it's not for me personally. So I looked at other options and I realized that I'm quite good at analysing stuff, and that came from English. So I looked at law and I found that it was quite this good fit for me. Like, I love debating, I love analysing stuff. And I just started watching shows. Like, I'm watching What's the Right Thing to Do, Justice by Michael Sandel on YouTube. Absolutely, he's an amazing guy. Like, I love him, got his book. And then the passion just started to go from there, started applying to stuff, co-founder of my school's law society. Yeah, like, that passion that you found, that where you found your passion for law is what you should mention in your passion statement, like why your passion stemmed from there. Like, my passion obviously stemmed from me just reading and stuff. That's why I'm such a nerd for law now. So you need to find that. And I'm sure probably all you guys have found why you want to study law. There must be like an underlying reason. It's obviously not a last minute degree that you decided to choose. Definitely, because you know law is competitive, it's a hard degree. So there's obviously a reason why you want to go into a 3-year law course, or 4, depending on if you're doing a language of it or you're doing Spanish law or French law. So yeah.
Definitely, it's really important to like play on your strengths and your passion. And I find it great that Kelvin actually talked about that. Like, don't go for something unless you're passionate about it, because you're going to be doing that degree for 3 years. So, you know, do it if you like it. And then moving on to Abby as to what made her want to do law.
Yeah, so for me, I guess it kind of started out quite early. Like, I was always kind of like the argumentative kid in class, and like if ever there was a debate, like the teacher or people in my class would be like, don't get Abby started, like this is gonna last forever. Yeah, so I was always kind of like into debating, very confrontational. I don't think that was always the best thing, but yeah, very argumentative. And I would leave classrooms and things, and like teachers and like my peers and things would say like, oh, you should really think about being a lawyer, like you make such a great lawyer, and like make all these jokes and stuff about how they were going to murder people and I was going to have to defend them, whatever. I'm sure we've had it all before. Yeah, so, and then I guess I kind of like took that on and like ran with it for a really long time. And I was like I remember my parents asking me like at dinner time, like, so like, what do you think you're going to do when you're older? And I was like, oh, I want to be a lawyer. And I didn't really know much about it. I didn't really have any clue what a lawyer did. And this was in like year 7, 8, 9. And then I watched Suits, and then I just kind of became obsessed, and I wanted to be the next like female Harvey Specter, Jessica Pearson, you know, I wanted it all. And I wanted to live that like sexy corporate job, like life. I wanted to work in the city. I wanted to work with huge companies. I wanted to be flying around the world, living like this great life and making so much money. And then I kind of had a reality check, because I think there was an event or something that I spoke to, and I spoke to lawyers, and they were like, you know, that's not what life is actually like it's nothing like Suits in real life. And then I was like, oh, I really need to figure this out now, because maybe this isn't what I want to do. And I couldn't have the Suits career, so I just started like researching law more, and I just fell in love with it, like researching it, doing the quizzes on the lawyer portal. What fictional lawyer are you? Still in the Suits phase, still rewatching Suits, but kind of with a bit more of like perspective on reality. And I just kind of researched and researched and researched, and all of a sudden I had this like 5-year plan of where I wanted to be and how I was gonna work at Magic Circle Law Firm, get my training contract, get my vacation scheme, and then I was gonna move to New York office, and I was gonna make partner and all this kind of stuff. So I was kind of worked it out really quickly, and then I was like, do you know what, we can stay take a step back. And I guess I started like applying for so many more things because I was really interested in it. And it began to take like a really big proportion of my life. And I just, the more I did, the more I fell in love with it, the more programs I did, the more things I applied for, the more people I spoke to. I think that was really helpful as well. And having conversations with people who also wanted to do law, who knew about the topics that I was talking about, has been super helpful. And this year, like finding a mentor to help me with university applications and speaking to him, and he's like has all this knowledge, and learning about it more and more has just helped me so much more, like to fall in love with the subject and to fall in love with the career. I think speaking to trainees, going to firm events, looking at the Shining Clifford Chance office in Canary Wharf, and walking past and seeing it in real life has just been like, whoa. And yeah, I guess the more like research and the more things I did, the more I fell in love with it. And then I kind of still have these moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like I'm doing all these cool things. And even like the UpLaw, all of us on here, the UpLaw team, you guys all make my passion for law bigger every day. So yeah.
That's really sweet, Abby, and I definitely think it's really important to do research because law isn't what they show it to be on TV programs. But that doesn't mean it's not interesting. It's really good to like branch out and talk to law students, talk to trainees, just to get a feel of how it is. So that's definitely good. And for our co-founder, Sanji, we also have the question, why did you decide to not study law at university?
Well, I had always wanted to study psychology. I always had like thing where I was like, I'm going to do psychology and then I'm going to become a therapist and I'm going to help so many people and it'll be great. And then there was a time where I was really like, well, is that really what I want as a career? And do I want to do that as a career? And as a career, it didn't appeal to me so much anymore. And I was like, well, what do I want to do as a career? And like Abby, I was watching Suits. So I did some research and I did a couple work experience schemes and spoke to people there. My very first one was a Spring Pod one, and I was like, well, this is a career, it really does appeal to me. And so it seemed like really obvious that I would want to do law at university. I was like, okay, well, that's what I have to do. And it was quite late, actually. It was like March this year, and I kind of started doing a lot more reading on it and more work experience, but it still didn't feel like completely certain. I was like, I still really do like love psychology. And it was more teachers in our school who said that, you know, you don't have to do a law degree if you want to become a lawyer. You can do something else and it will be just as good. If not, it will even give you like an extra understanding of a certain different subject that might aid you as a lawyer. And I was like, oh, well, you know, that's really true. Like I never thought of it that way before. And it was like what Anjali said with her super curriculars, except for me, it was with psychology. Like I've watched about so many TED Talks. If you tell me about a TED Talk, and I've probably watched it, especially if it's on psychology. So I'd done so much reading, so much looking into it. And I really do enjoy psychology at IB level as well. I'm studying it right now. And it's like, even if I do get a bad grade because say I didn't revise or I got mixed up with my essay structure, I do still love the subject. Like it doesn't make me dislike the subject because I did badly. And as much as it sucks doing badly, if you still enjoy a subject after you didn't do well, I think it means that you really do like it. And so I decided that I should study psychology at university and then go ahead and pursue a career in law later on, because it just felt more right. It's like if you're really having to think whether like you've done enough and you can't imagine yourself like reading up on a subject outside of lesson time, then maybe it's not for you, because as a degree and as a career, sometimes it can be quite different. Like it's a lot of reading for both, but yeah, it's important to understand what the degree versus the career actually entail.
Yeah, that's definitely really good insight from Sanji. Like the degree is different to the career, so it's good to do research in both. And a law degree isn't the only way into law. Like there's so many different ways, like a conversion course. So I really encourage like Sanji, do what you love at uni. whether that be, I don't know, English or history or anything, because there's always a conversion course into law. You don't need to do law to go into law. So I think that's really important. And for our next question, you might want to like whip out your notebooks, you know, write it down, because I'm going to ask Kelvin, any books or podcasts you recommend to gain an insight for those interested in law?
Literally, I have like my books. So I'm not gonna like list everything because it'd be too much, but we'll probably make a post on a bunch of books and podcasts for you guys. So for example, the first book I'd really recommend if you're trying to explore the whole justice element of the law is Justice by Michael Sandel. He's an amazing Harvard philosopher. He's done a few talks, and a lot of people, like, even if you want to do PP or law, a lot of people read this book. Another book is The Great Legal Debates of Jurisprudence. I would definitely recommend reading that. I'm reading that now because I want to apply to Oxford, so I want to try and make a jurisprudence element of my personal statement. Another book I'm reading, which is for my extended essay for the IB, is The Trial by Franz Kafka. He's a German author, and he's critiquing bureaucracy and justice, judicial injustice, and I'm exploring that in my extended essay. So I'm looking at I'm contrasting it with To Kill a Mockingbird, which is to do racism and judicial bias, and I'm comparing it to this with bureaucracy. And then, yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird. And then a good book, if you're still on the edge, a bit of a generic book though, because I'm sure everyone's read it now, is Let Us to a Law Student. I really like, you can put it on your personal statement, but at the same time, it's like, okay, everyone's gonna have that book because it's just like, it's so generic. Still read it though. And then another book is by an ex-lawyer, John Grisham. John Grisham has a bunch of stories, and it really puts a unique touch on personal statement because not a lot of people read John Grisham. I would say when we make the post, I will list a bunch of books for criminal law, human rights law, contracts law. For example, I've got on my phone, Jay Adams and R. Brownsword, Understanding Contracts Law, 4th edition, is really good. There's books for different types of law as well. You've got Fake Law, you've got As Eve Was Framed, Is Eating People Wrong? Key book. Definitely read that book, it's an amazing book. I would say any book by The Secret Barrister is also a great book to talk about. And then if you don't like reading books personally, sometimes they can be quite boring reading law books. So I'd recommend the Gresham College. Gresham College have a bunch of law lectures, and that's why I actually emailed a professor from Queen Mary. I just emailed him inquiring about the lecture on data privacy and stuff like that. And they are quite willing to message you and talk to you about it. So definitely reach out to them if you can. If you have the confidence to do so, I'd recommend doing it because it could actually boost your personal statement up. I would say podcasts like Law in Action, The Economist, Intelligence, definitely start reading them, start listening to them. If you are trying to revise for the LNAT in terms of news, listen to The Economist and The Intelligence. Today's program by BBC is a great way to just listen to the news. You don't like watching it that much. And I also, my last final thing, because I'm not going to ramble on too much about books, is don't read books if you want to read books. You could watch a TED Talk and then talk about that in your personal statement. For example, I watched a TED Talk on space law, did a work experience with Big Voice London in association with Linklaters about space law. And I found out that I actually really like space law, which is so hilarious. I never thought I would like space law, imagine that. And I'm talking about that in my personal statement now. So I would say, watch videos if you find that better. If you don't like to watch videos and you like to read, maybe take notes, do that. Definitely watch the lectures, definitely watch Michael Sandel on YouTube. You'd be surprised as to how much you can learn from that guy and how much it could really put a twist. Say, for example, you're in an interview and you're doing a legal problem and you're using the IRAC method. I learned the IRAC method in the legal summer school that I did. And I think it will definitely help me when I'm analysing legal problems and interviews now, because basically with IRAC is that you have an issue, you state the legal principle, then you analyse it from both defence and prosecution, and then you do a little conclusion. And yeah, that's what I have to say in terms of books, podcasts, and news articles. And we'll definitely make a post on that because I think it's something that people are struggling with.
Yep, definitely. Thank you so much for all the resources and the different range. We probably will be making a post. Just a quick note, the meeting says it will end in 5 minutes. If everyone could just rejoin the same link, and then we'll get started again. But in the meantime, I think Abby also has a few books or resources to recommend us.
Yeah, I was just gonna say another really great one. I think his writing is really like easily consumed and easy to understand. He is very persuasive, so I would recommend, if you are gonna read these books, that you take everything he says with a pinch of salt and research your own. But anything by Jonathan Sumption is really great. Everyone here from the UpLaw team knows that I was gonna say this because I talk about this all the time. But Trials of the State is the first Jonathan Sumption book I read, and he did the BBC Reith lectures in 2019, and it's all about like constitutional law. He's an ex-Supreme Court justice, so you may know who he is. Again, very persuasive. Take everything he says with a pinch of salt. But also, so Trials of the State is his first book, and Law in a Time of Crisis I have here, which is the second one. Both of them are really amazing, very, very interesting. Lots of conversations that are very like topical at the minute about judicial review and judicial overreach, and lots of conversations about sovereignty, which are really interesting. And especially if you do politics A level, they're like very good to read, and you'll definitely get a lot from them. And I also think that lots of the law books, some of them are very difficult to understand, especially the more academic ones. And I think the Jonathan Sumption ones are very easy to read if you don't have so much like legal knowledge. So yeah, I would recommend those a lot. And then as far as like commercial awareness and like LNAT prep goes, the Financial Times news briefing, I swear by it. I kid you not, every time I go to a legal event or something, I have the Financial Times news on, and it goes for like, it's not even that long, it's really short. I can't remember how long exactly, but it's very short, and I literally write down the top stories, find the BBC articles or the Guardian articles that match with them, read them all, and then I know that on the legal event there's going to be something about commercial awareness, and I will have a question to ask, I will have a point to raise, I will have something to discuss. And I think that's definitely very helpful. And then LNAT things, I have my LNAT books here because I thought maybe we would talk about them, but this one is really helpful. Again, I can link them on the LinkedIn group. That one's really helpful. That's for essay questions. The mastering the National Admissions Test for Law is really great. And then the one that we all have, which is the Ultimate LNAT Collection. I have the old version because I bought it very, very early. The cover looks slightly different now, but Kelvin, I think, he's got it there. The Ultimate LNAT Collection is amazing. There are so many questions. I think there's like over 600. And like mock papers, full mock papers, so you can calculate an average, essay questions, support, help, guidance, everything you need is in that book.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, we definitely need to make like a post or something with those resources in there so everyone can access them. And Kelvin?
I just wanted to say, in terms of reading as well on podcast, I actually forgot. There's this, we'll make a post about it, but there's this website, the Bailey, where you can get a bunch of legal cases. For example, so I'll type it in when we rejoin. It's the Bailey, it has a bunch of legal cases, and it's really good if you actually mention one of those cases in your personal statement, you analyze it. For example, I'm analyzing the Bruno v. Lachal case for media and law communications, and that's going to be based on my personal statement. I'm talking about defamation and the law and the meaning of defamation. So I definitely say find the legal case. For example, the footballer that was in the news earlier with 4 counts of, I don't know what he did, sexual assault. That would be an amazing case to put because it shows that you're on the news and you're watching. The Oxford Union, I think they have debates. Watch those. Oh my gosh, you'll learn so much. Jubilee, watch their debates. LNAT prep done. That's your essay done. That's actually your essay done because I guarantee some form of question will pop up from that and you'll be able to do it. And the Parliament also have debates and you can watch as well. So I'd recommend doing that. There's one more, I can't remember. Oh my gosh. I'll remember it when we rejoin, I think.
Yeah, also, I was going back to what Abby said, like that Financial Times tip is so helpful because it's actually going to help me. So when I go to all these law events, I'm going to do exactly what Abby did. And agreeing with what Kelvin said, it's kind of like really good to include a case in your person. Again, it's not a must-have, but I included a case called R.B. Jordan, which kind of changed the history of like medical negligence cases. So I think it'll be really nice to put in a case because it shows that, again, you're just doing that extra part. You're doing your own research, you're making your own interpretations and cases, which you kind of will be doing in the law degree. And now I'm going to end the meeting and we'll restart it. So if everyone could rejoin, same link, that would be great. See you then. Okay, go on, Kelvin.
I remember the name now. Watch the Supreme Court. You'd be surprised. Go on. You can watch the live. Like when they're in court. Watch that. That's actually realistic, because if you can't visit the court, you could say, "Oh, I watched the Supreme Court online, and I really enjoyed listening to this case about X and Y." That'd be really good as well, because I know universities love to see that you actually went to go visit a court in person. So I definitely recommend doing that. That'd be really helpful as well. That was what I forgot to say.
Also, I was just going to quickly add, I think some courts are open now. Like I had a friend, like someone who I knew, who went to the Old Bailey and watched a case. So like I think some of them are open, and I think you just have to double check that they're open for viewing, but you can go and watch cases. So if you can do that, that might be really helpful as well. And if you find something really interesting going on in there, that could be something you talk about in your personal statement.
Yeah, thank you guys for all the resources. And then if you want to put some of them in the chat, you can, but we will be making a post which will be going out soon to help you with your personal statement. Our next question is, how do you know what to write in a personal statement? Like, how do you go about approaching it? How do you know what to put down? And I'm going to first direct this question to our co-founder, Anjali.
So in terms of the supercurriculars that you include in your personal statement, I would recommend, especially if you're applying to Oxbridge or like any university that requires an interview, something that you're actually really passionate about, something that you can talk about for ages and it won't trip you up. Like you could just speak about it off the top of your head, because if you are doing an interview, they tend to ask you questions based on your personal statement. But in general, like when a university admissions person reads your personal statement, they can tell if you actually care about something that you're talking about, or if you're just doing it for the sake of it because it looks good. But then again, don't just go with like what the majority of people are doing. So don't go with like generic type of activities, like how Kelvin said, Letters to a Law Student is a good book, but it isn't the best to include in your personal statement because so many other people have read it and it doesn't exactly help you stand out. The thing that does like help you stand out is choosing a topic that is interesting to you, but you also kind of find unique in a way. So you could start off with a generic topic, but then if you go in further into that topic and do your own analysis or your own take on it, so say you find some niche topic in criminal law, for example, finding journal articles or listening to a podcast and then linking that to a book that you read later on is just a really good way of getting a good structure in your personal statement and also finding a way to stand out as well. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely, I agree with that, Anjali. It's really good to write about stuff you're passionate about and stuff you've done, because if you do have an interview, you're going to have to talk about it. So you want to write about things you're strong in, things you can like talk to your teachers or your friends about. That's really great. And then our co-founder, Abby.
Yeah, so I kind of did a similar thing to like what Anjali, and I'm still doing it now with my personal statement, is starting out with something quite broad. So like a topic area of interest for me was constitutional law, because I think it's one of the areas of law that I've had most like interaction with, especially in like studying it in politics, and looking at like the idea of the Constitution and comparing that to the American Constitution, and just like the different branches of government and things like that. So I thought about it a lot. So so I have a mentor who I speak to about Cambridge admissions, and he kind of helped me like narrow it down more. So when I started thinking about that, first we started looking at topics about sovereignty, because it was something that came up in his interview and he was very passionate about. So we started having those kind of conversations about like who is sovereign in the UK, is Parliament still sovereign? Because that's quite like an opinion that's held in politics A-level a lot. It's like a fact, undisputed, that Parliament is sovereign. And actually, when you look at it more, Parliament isn't really sovereign. And it's something I could talk for hours about. It's extremely interesting. I would definitely recommend you read more about it if it's something you're also interested in, or if you study politics A-level, because it's amazing to see your politics teacher's face drop when you tell them that Parliament is not sovereign, and you give them a really good reason why. Also, if you're interested in it, I recommend reading any kind of work by Trevor Allen on sovereignty. He's a Cambridge academic, talks a lot about sovereignty and public law, very interesting. So I kind of stuck with constitutional law. We went down the sovereignty route, and then from sovereignty, when we were talking about sovereignty, we were like, okay, is the judiciary sovereign, or is the rule of law sovereign, which is very interesting, and lots of like theory-based legal questions that we were asking. And then through that, we kind of came on the topic of judicial overreach and judicial review, which is probably why I like Sumption a lot more, as you can tell. And then thinking about Sumption is a huge fan of like, the courts are overstepping, they're getting involved in politics. Politics should be allowed to do what they want. We need to like scrap the courts, right? And that's not something I personally agree with. And reviewing that more, I've thought a lot more about different opinions. And kind of like, I guess my personal statement really fits that like flow of my journey with the subject, and starting out with something very broad, going through different like things, conversations about sovereignty, and then narrowing that down more to judicial review and the arguments for and against, and how, when from reading one article that I brought to my mentor and said, look at this sounds really interesting, would love to see where this goes, and hearing his opinion on it, hearing like reading Jonathan Sumption and listening to the Reith lectures, and then looking at my own opinion, and going through that. And I guess my personal statement really follows that quite nicely. So when you're thinking about how to write your personal statement, I think it's really great to start with something that you're very passionate about. Like, I've spoken to someone who's very interested in like women and the legal justice system, and they kind of started with that, and then they've got like a taster lecture, a book, you know, like things like that. And where it kind of like follows is you can see that like journey as her opinion develops and as more topics come into the conversation. And I think that kind of like flow is very nice to have, and it allows you to critically analyze in depth more and to focus on a lot of things in greater detail, which I think is really beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. And carrying on with like the theme of personal statements as well, we have questions saying, what advice would you give yourself when looking back, like to when you started writing a personal statement? And for that question, I'd first like to go to our co-founder, Sanchi.
So I would say just write. For me, especially, the hardest part was starting. Starting is always the hardest bit, because you're like, you can never figure out what to start with, what the right first line is, and you're like, I need to really wow them and all of that stuff. But I was watching a lecturer a professor at Oxford talk about writing a good personal statement. He's from Jesus College, and he said that, first of all, you don't have to wow them with your first line. Your whole personal statement needs to wow them as a whole. So don't go radical or extreme or any of that stuff. Just start with something that can form a basis for the rest of your personal statement. And going back to saying to just write it is just absolute gibberish. Just throw everything out onto a page, and then you'll have something to go off of. Even if it sounds so stupid, like the very first thing that I wrote for my psychology one was, I love psychology, it's so great. It's really fun, and I watched lots of TED Talks on it, for example, this one, that one, and you just kind of ramble on. It's kind of like a stream of consciousness where you think about all the things that link back to your subject, and it ends up bringing up a lot of kind of new ideas and new information, well, not necessarily new, but information that you can use to structure your personal statement overall. And don't focus on the word count in your first draft. You're going to have so many drafts. Our teachers at school said that the best, sort of not the best, but a lot of the Oxbridge personal statements had at least 5 to 7 drafts. Like, you write it so many times, and you just have to keep going over it and over it. And trust me, if you feel like it's cringy, don't worry. Like, I've written my first draft, I'm like, oh, I can't read over this. It's so disgusting. It's so embarrassing to show other people. But do just give it to your friends or your teachers and be like, can you read this for me, please? No, it makes me cringe, but just have a look through and give me some advice, because teachers especially will have read like so many. So they'll be more than happy to help you. And this links a bit to the interview, but someone that we met at St Edmund's Hall in Oxford said that if you're putting something into your personal statement, it should be something that is a safe space for you. So if you're asked about it in your Oxford or Cambridge interview, you should be able to go, oh yeah, thank God, I know everything about that. Let me tell you all about it. And it should be an easy starting point rather than something that throws you off guard and you're like, I can't do this, because otherwise you're going to lose your footing and it's really going to put you off. And I'm sure Tasnia can tell you more about interviews if that's something that you're thinking about, but your personal statement, you have to know everything on there so well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Santi there, whereas for your first draft, it's just about getting stuff on paper. Your shaping up comes around like the 4th or 5th draft. I think I had around like 8 drafts, and like the last 3 drafts are just getting the word count and the sentences correct. But those first few drafts are really just about the content, so I definitely agree with that. And I definitely agree with the whole safe space thing. But only put in there what you can talk about. And also moving on to our co-founder Dana as well. I think she has some advice as well that she'd like to give herself.
So I would say 2 things. Like, firstly, don't put too much pressure on yourself to make it look perfect, because I think you'll come to the end where you have to put it into the UCAS form and it won't be perfect, and you just have to face that. I'm sorry. And another thing is, if some people don't like it, because you will be giving it to your parents, you'll be giving it to your friends, you'll be giving it to your teachers, and sometimes some people will not like it, and maybe you will like it personally, but they won't. I think you just have to trust yourself and trust in yourself and trust that you know what you wrote, and if you like it, then the college might like it, or even if the college doesn't like it that you want, then maybe they weren't the right college to begin with, and maybe you weren't the right fit for them, and maybe you'll find a college that's better for you.
Yeah, definitely. Don't pressure yourself. And leading on to that, one more thing I want to add on is give yourself enough time to write that first statement. One thing I did was I rushed it like a week and a half before the deadline. So guys, don't do that. Give yourself enough time to note it down. Give your teachers enough time to look through your draft. Like, don't rush through it, and especially because mocks and stuff will all come around that time. So just don't put yourself through that. Like, organize your time really well. And I think going on to our co-founder Anjali as well, what advice would you give yourself when looking back?
So I'm just going to reiterate the point about just getting started and like putting everything down on the page, because so many people worry about the introduction because they don't know where to start. But I think when I originally wrote my first draft, when I started writing, I didn't realize like how much I had to actually speak about. And when you start speaking about all of this like supercurriculars that you've done and like expanding upon those points, you just realize that you've got so much more than you originally thought you did have to speak about. In terms of writing your personal statement, I cannot stress enough, like even if you have like these like a long list of supercurriculars and you're, you know, having trouble parting with kicking out certain activities, you'll have to eventually get rid of some, because you can't just list as many activities as possible. You've got to go into detail and like explore the different activities in depth to like create a good personal statement. When I wrote my first draft, like I wrote it on a Google document, and I just I'm still doing this to this day, but I just constantly annotate it. And I think it is a good tool to just use, like, or printing it out, just annotating it and adding suggestions all the time, because I always just get like these random different ideas, and just having one place to put all of those different amendments that you want to add into it, your personal statement, is really helpful. Obviously, you're not going to be happy with your first draft, and so that's why I think it also is important to leave time, because I found that right now there are so many activities that I just don't like being in my personal statement anymore. And now that I've done more activities over the course of the summer that I think, in my opinion, look better in my personal statement, it's having that time to make all of those changes, because over time I had supercurriculars that I'd included from year 10, But now that I'm in year 12 and going into year 13, there is just so much more that I've done in that progress of time that like I want to add. So that's why I think it's important to start as soon as you can.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. You can't put in everything, but you put in the things that relate the most, so you can talk about the most. Due to time constraints, we're going to move on to the next question, but I'd like to direct this towards both Abby and Kelvin. And what are some musts or must nots for your personal statement?
I think like personally a huge one like that I've come across, like that people said don't ever do this, is start your personal statement with a quote. That's like a big one, is never do that. There are also lots of quite like cliche books. I know we kind of spoke about it, like Letters to a Law Student is quite a big one that lots of people talk about. Definitely like even like there are huge ones like Is Eating People Wrong? That one comes quite a lot. And I think if you're going to talk about a book like that, I'm not saying don't, because you can, but I just think make sure that what you're saying is something that admissions tutor hasn't heard again and again and again for like a long time, because lots of, especially the law books, they've been around for a while, and I think there's a few of them that like admissions tutors have definitely read the same phrases over and over and over again. Also, I'd recommend, like, again, a huge one is, I think I said it before, making sure that your personal statement is about the degree and not the career is huge, because a lot of people, they list like the endless activities they've done with firms, and it's like, okay, you've worked with 5 different corporate firms and you've worked at Magic Circle law firms and done this program, this program, this program, and this program. Okay, but on say one of the universities you applied for, they don't offer a module on corporate law. So like, don't talk about it if it's not like an option kind of thing, because remember that obviously like even applying for like Oxford and things like that, like there, and especially for like law degrees, I'd keep what you're saying quite interest focused and like the core modules focused, because you know that every university is going to offer that. Whereas if you talk about something that's like very much taught at like post graduate level, it's going to be harder for the interviewer to be like, hang on a second, we don't teach this here. Like, you're applying for something and your interest is something that we don't actually offer. So try and make sure that it's like something that the university actually does offer. Because like I had a friend doing like English literature, I think, and one of the things she was talking about was something quite niche in like feminist literature, and the universities, all of the universities she was applying for, didn't offer anything on like feminist critical theory. So she was like, my teacher at school, our Oxford teacher, was like, you can't put that in your personal statement if it's something that none of the universities offer, because it's not going to be applicable, it's not relatable, and all the admissions tutors are going to read that being like, yeah, that's really cool, but we don't teach that here. And then another one, I think, what is it? Yeah, I guess like be original if you can, and also avoid defining what law is. I think that's a huge one, and it comes across very cringy, like when you try and define what law is and like how law is in like all aspects of society and things like that. I think it can be done very well if it's done in a very nuanced, like well written, eloquent way, but it's very hard to do. So I would say avoid it if you can, because admissions students have heard the Aristotle quote, like law is, what is it, reason for justice free from reason, something like that, again and again and again. So try and avoid that if you can.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Avoid trying to define law and stuff like that. And one thing to add on is like, avoid cliches. You know, I wanted to do law since I was a child. Avoid those, because admissions, they hear it all the time. And also avoid saying that you want to go to specific unis. Don't put in your personal statement, I want to go to LSE because you're applying to 4 other unis and they're all going to see it. And then they're going to be like, okay, so they don't actually want us. So avoid doing those 2 things. So Kelvin, is there anything you want to add on for musts or like
yeah, like first of all, I'd say don't read too many personal statements, because I can't remember who said this. I don't know if it was Tasnia or someone from the UpLaw team. Is that if you read too many, you'll start like, there's some psychological term to it. I forgot the name of it. I researched it after they said it, but like, just don't read too many, because you'll start to input words from other people's personal statements, and you won't realize it because it's unintentional, but then it will just get flagged up on the UCAS like plagiarism checker. So don't do that. I'd also say in terms of personal statements, try like be unique, but like try and be smart with the uniqueness that you put in your personal statement. Try and be niche. Like I've gone really niche, and I'm kind of happy I have. But I can talk about what's on my personal statement for ages. Like, can we talk about space law? How many people do you hear talk about space law in a personal statement? Like, honestly, like I would say you don't need to be really amazing. Like you can talk about criminal law and you can talk about law reformations and criminal law. Loads of people have done that, but at the same time, it's what you're interested in. And if you can demonstrate that in an eloquent way, then it's fine enough. You don't need to put lots of fancy terminology. Like I don't have loads of fancy terminology in my word bank. I don't have that whatsoever. Like look at me speaking right now. I literally don't have that. Like the way I write is quite eloquent in a sense that I can still put those fancy words in there. I would say don't juice it up too much by using a thesaurus because it would be so obvious if you use a thesaurus, very obvious. And like on the point of personal statements, I would say you don't need an intro, just go straight into it like everyone said. You can put like, I've seen a few personal statements where they've gone, is justice always served? Or they would define justice, but I would say justice is quite a subjective point because you don't know what that means. And it can differ between different people. And the structure for a personal statement, it really depends, honestly. Like I know Oxbridge say 80%, 20%, 80% academic, 20% extracurricular, supercurriculars. But it honestly really depends because you're applying for different universities and some universities like to see you implementing into your school basis or you doing other stuff like volunteering. And you can learn loads of valuable skills from volunteering or doing something like that. For example, if you're like running a law society or you're tutoring, you're learning transferable skills like communication, talking from different people from walks of life. Or if you work at Tesco, you can actually put that in your personal statement. On a summer school, they said you can put you working in a bar or restaurant. You've learned so many skills from that. You've learned to multitask, you've learned to plan, you've learned to communicate with other people. Like there's valuable skills, and I guess that's unique in its own sense. I would say you don't need work experience. If you're worried about you haven't done any summer programs or work experience, it's okay, you don't need that. You reading a book, you engaging, watching a TED Talk, listening to a podcast, I don't know, watching a YouTube channel is more than enough to stand and wow a professor or whatever university you're applying to. So don't stress. Like the reason why I did so many law programs was just because of my GCSEs. And I was a bit worried because I was like, I need to find a way to stand out. So by me, for example, like I only have one work experience in my personal statement. That's my barrister work experience because I think that's the most valuable one. And that's the reason why my passion for media and law communication stems from. Your teacher reference is a key factor as well in applying to universities. I don't think anyone's mentioned that because your teacher reference can put so much in there. They can put so much. They can be like, oh, Kelvin's done these law programs. He's demonstrated a wide interest in the legal field, X, Y, Z. I don't know. They can put so much in there. They can talk about you as a character. And even for the Cambridge, like the Cambridge SAQ, that's also another part where you can talk about your personal statement or add a few more factors into it. So yeah, just also learn how to critique your own personal statement because I'm not going to lie, you giving it to your teacher, even though they've read so many law personal statements, they don't 100% know what they're talking about. You may have read a book and they may have put on the side note saying, oh, that's not factually correct. But actually, if the book says it's factually correct and it's written by a law professor, then it is correct. So I would say maybe make a box in a Google Doc or a Word document. Line by line, me and Sanji did this before we broke up. We had our like Oxbridge teachers. They made us put our personal statement, our first draft, line by line into a box, and we'd rate it from 1 to 5 and critique it. And we give it to someone else that's in the same degree as us, and they'd critique and be like, "Oh, hold on, Kelvin, this is a bit too cliche." Like for example, I rushed my first draft. My first draft was the night before type of thing, and my first draft was good, by the way, actually, surprisingly, even though I rushed it the night before. I was so shocked. But I've completely changed my first draft and I'm still planning my second draft. I haven't even started it yet. Because my first draft is a bit too bland, a bit too basic, a bit too dry. My teacher said it was good, but I just felt like my passion isn't showing. My first draft literally was about RV, Dudley and Stevens. And it was literally about me being in a Pathways program and listening to a bunch of webinars. And I just thought, that's not really me. I'm not really advocating for myself in my personal statement. So yeah, that's all I have to say, really and truly. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Calvin and Sanji. Do you want to add something on?
Yeah, just a couple things that I picked up on while Abby and Kelvin were talking, just remembering some advice that I've gotten. it's first thing is remember that you're talking to an academic. With the definition of law, the reason it's so bad is they're an academic who studied their subject and taught it for so many years, and you're telling them what their subject means. That can be quite like, okay, well, this is my subject, of course I know what it means. So like Abby said, if you do it in slightly like a more maybe analytical way, or not kind of like law is this, then it sounds a lot better. And next thing is make sure you research your courses for all of the universities you're applying to, because it will help you understand what to put in your personal statement to make sure that you are actually the right fit for the universities, and also so that you know whether you actually want to apply there. If you're going somewhere because of the name, it's obviously important for future employment, but if you don't enjoy the course that they're offering, then there's really no point, because you won't do well if you're not enjoying it, because you really won't have any motivation to keep you driven and going. And always understand the words that you're saying. Like Kelvin said, don't use a thesaurus, because all it will end up doing is putting words in there and the sentence just won't make sense. It will have loads of long words, and maybe to your friend it will look really good because they don't know what those words mean, but to a top academic, again, they're gonna know, and they're not gonna find it very impressive if you're using random words that just don't make sense in the context. And if you do need guidance for personal statement structures, maybe try and look at completely unrelated subjects. Maybe if you're applying to an essay subject, look at a science subject personal statement, but mostly for structure rather than actual content, because like Kelvin said, it will probably end up with you picking things up and putting them in your own statement. And although it's really counterintuitive, your personal statement is you selling yourself. So you have to be like, yeah, I'm the best person in the world, and you should take me into university because I'm not the one benefiting, you're the one benefiting. It's really like, it feels so weird selling yourself like that, but it's really what you have to do. And I'm not sure if someone's mentioned this yet, but with grades, with sort of opportunities that you had, everything is contextualized. So if your school is lower performing or in a slightly worse area, then the university will know that, and they will look at your performance in relation to that of your school and your peers. And so if you feel like, you know, there are all these incredibly intelligent people applying to Oxbridge and all of that, and you feel like you haven't really got the grades, don't worry, because it's contextualized. Just give it your best, really, that's all you can do. And with teacher references, punctuality is actually a lot more important than you think, because I was always like, why do I always have to get references from my form tutor? They don't even know me, we barely even talk. But they really do look at like how many times you're late to school, how many times you're on time to lessons, and it can influence their reference a little bit. So make sure you guys are getting to school on time for the next academic year. And I think I saw this in another, this is my last point, so I've been rambling, but the teacher who does a couple videos about personal statements and applying to Oxbridge said that the teacher reference actually reflects quite a bit about the school, more than the area, well, not more than, but on top of the area and the performance of the students. If the teacher reference tends to be a lot longer and much more detailed, then it shows that teachers probably have more time to dedicate to their students, and they are more focused on each individual student rather than having kind of a lot of students to one teacher. But if it's quite vague and really brief, then they'll probably understand that the teachers have a lot of students they have to cater to. And that's, again, relative to the school. So if all of the teacher references for a certain school are really similar in that sense, then they'll understand that through that means. But yeah, that was all.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Thank you so much for that, Kelvin and Sanchi. But again, due to time constraints, we're going to be moving on. I think I saw Kelvin put in the chat a few programs to apply for, and I definitely recommend Zero Gravity. Like, my mentor helped me so much throughout my interview process. So that's one program like I definitely think everyone should apply for. Our next question is, should you talk about your A-level subjects? And I'm going to start off this one. So for my personal statement, I actually didn't include my A levels. I only included like half a line about history because it was to do with human rights. So I was talking about human rights abuses during the Cold War. But other than that, I didn't really talk about A levels. But obviously, everyone's personal statement journey is different, so you might. So then for that part, I'm going to go on to like our co-founders Dana and like Kelvin and Abby to talk about that.
So I actually dedicated a whole paragraph in my personal statement to my 3 A levels, and I basically talked about like the skills I gained from them, and I think it was also quite fitting because I did do politics as an A level, so that quite linked, because I also talked about constitutional law a bit in my personal statement. So I think it's just about trying to find a way that your A levels link to why you're passionate about law. And because really, they want to see that. And actually, if you do study STEM subjects and you find a way to make it link, it can actually make your personal statement quite unique and stand out if you can find a way to do that. But if you can't, try and think about like the skills that will make you that you gained from your A levels that will make you a good law student.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Dana. It's really good to get 2 perspectives on that, because again, like everyone's personal statement journey is different. Again, due to time constraints, we will be moving on. Is it normal to study law and not want to be a lawyer? Is the question I hear all the time. And I was going to direct this towards our co-founders, Dana, and then open the floor to our other co-founders. If they have anything to add on, just raise their hand and we can quickly add it on.
Well, so basically, yes, you can study law because and go on to do like accounting, investment banking. You can work in the charity sector, in politics. Law, the subject, is quite different from law, the career. So don't think that, although most people will be studying law to then do law, don't think that you have to follow that career path if it's not for you. Are you talking about university? What do you mean?
Yeah, I just want to say, like, Emily, if you are talking about university, what I remember someone saying is that you can get a bunch of teachers to write references for you, and then you can collate that into one big document. And then the pieces that you want from your teacher's references, you can pinpoint it and then put it into your own teacher reference and get a teacher to just collate that into one teacher reference to make it really adequate and to make it flow. But if you're talking about like applications, like, I don't know, work experiences or stuff, I would say I have like a teacher that I love and she just knows me really well. So I always get her to write my references for me because I know she knows I've applied to so many programs. So she already has the structured reference thing for me anyways. So if you're talking about applications, I would say go to a teacher that knows you the best and knows that you have a great passion for law or psychology or English literature, and then get them to write that teacher reference for you.
Okay, and then moving on to our last and final question. Is it necessary to have work experience for law school admissions? I'm going to start that off by briefly saying it's not necessary to have work experience, specifically law work experience anyways. Because if you have like super curriculars or books and stuff, you can always put that in to show your dedication towards a degree. Obviously, if you do have work experience, that's also great to put in, but I don't think it's a must-have. And then I'm also going to go to my co-founder, Anjali, if she wants to add anything onto that.
Yeah, I was just gonna repeat the same point about how it isn't actually like a necessary thing. Only for courses like medicine do you need to have work experience. If you do want to include work experience in your personal statement, that's completely fine. But like, as long as it's relevant and it's something that you gain from that experience or you learn something from that experience, don't speak about it just for the sake of it because you just want to throw in the name of the law firm or whatever work experience you did. Make sure it's something that you genuinely gain something from that experience. Like, I've done various work experience activities, and I'm not actually going to include any of them in my personal statement because, one, it doesn't fit in with my personal statement. So if you're just gonna throw that in there, make sure it flows and it's attached to something else in your personal statement, or you can add something onto that. And also to I just didn't think it was relevant enough because I had other activities that I'd gained similar skills from that I thought were more unique to personal statement.
Definitely. Kelvin, do you want to add something on?
Yeah, just like quickly, like you don't need work experience. You really don't need it at all. Like, I know some people just mention a big law firm because they know the university has a kind of association with them. So it'd be nice to know that you've done something with that law firm. It shows your engagement in terms of the legal field, but you don't need it. If the work experience you did really grew that passion for law, like I did with my barrister work experience, then mention it. If you talked about a case with barristers and you actually had that first point contact, like for example, I did the bar placement scheme, and I really learned so much from the barristers. Like I learned so much from one of the cases. That's why I'm talking about a case. You don't need work experience. You watching that TED talk is perfectly fine. Watching that YouTube video is perfectly